ho, ho! Merry Christmas! Hello, children. It's Santa Claus. And I've come to read a story for you today. We're going to read Miracle on 34th Street. This was written by Valentine Davis. And there are some illustrations that I will be showing you. It says they're paintings by Tommy de Paola. So this was originally a movie, so this is sort of the screenplay for the movie, but they turned it into a book with lots of pretty pages and pictures for us to enjoy together. Every day I'll read you a chapter, and then we'll come back the next day and we'll read the next chapter. To make it simpler for everyone, I will put what chapter we are in for our particular reading for that day in the description, so you'll know exactly what chapter to go on. And if you miss a chapter, you can always go back and we can do another chapter together just by using that option. So here we go. Miracle on 34th Street. So today we'll read the first chapter. One of my favorite books because, you know, I'm in it. Santa Claus is in the book. It's all about Santa Claus. Look, I'm even on the cover. I love the way they make me look on this cover. It's very, very, very nice. All right, chapter 1. Are you ready? Okay. If you searched every old folks' home in the country, you couldn't find anyone who looked more like Santa Claus. Well, except for me, of course. He was the living, breathing incarnation of the old gent. White beard, pink cheeks, fat tummy and all, and his name was Kris Kringle too. Whether this was coincidence or design, a sort of stage name he had assumed, his friends at the Maplewood Home for the Aged never knew. Nor did they know exactly how old he was. His white whiskers made him look a good 75, and yet when he laughed or walked, you would swear he wasn't a day over 50. His eyes were quick and happy, and he had a smile to match. Not only did Kris look precisely like Santa Claus, he firmly believed he was that jolly old gentleman. Dr. Pierce, the physician at Maplewood, found this delusion innocent and harmless. In fact, the old man's kindly shrewdness in all other respects had won the doctor completely. He was devoted to Kris and was his staunchest defender. He often came to visit his little room at Maplewood. It was littered with toys of all sizes and shapes, half-finished models and catalogs. Kris spent most of his time there smoking his pipe and whittling at his toys. One November morning, when Dr. Pierce dropped in, Kris hardly noticed him. He was reading a newspaper advertisement, and his eyes snapped with indignation as he read. A shopping service offered to make all purchases of Christmas gifts well in advance of the holiday and save the subscriber 10% in the bargain. All you have to do is send us the names and ages of all the people you wish to remember, Kris read aloud. We will relieve you of the irksome necessity of Christmas shopping. Angrily, Kris threw the paper on the floor. Is this what Christmas has degenerated into, Doctor? He asked. It's pure commercialism. Is there no true Christmas spirit left in the world? Dr. Pierce was afraid not. Christmas had certainly been commercialized. It had become big business, and the spirit behind it seemed to be lost in the milling crowds that packed all the stores. Kris was not prepared to believe that, in spite of outward appearances and ads like this. No, Doctor, he said. Underneath all the hurry and bustle, people still believe in Santa Claus and all Christmas stands for. Well, that's nice, isn't it? He suddenly smiled at the doctor and asked him what he wanted for Christmas. I'll tell you what I want, said Pierce half to himself. An X-ray machine. We've needed one here for years. You shall have it, Kris said. The doctor smiled. If I get an X-ray machine, I'll know you're Santa Claus. You just wait, Doctor. You'll see. Kris picked up a toy and started to whittle away on it, cheerfully pulling at his pipe. But Dr. Pierce was worried. A frown settled over his pleasant face as he watched Kris working. There was something on his mind, and he groped for the right words. Finally, he forced himself to come right out with it. Kris, you'll have to leave Maplewood. Why? Asked Kris in astonishment. Well, the doctor explained he had been fighting the board on this for years, but they had finally overruled him and issued a definite order. In fact, there was nothing more Pierce could do. That sounds awful. And here's a picture that says his eyes were quick and happy, And he had a smile to match. I'll get that right about there for you so you can see. It's me! It's me making a toy! Very, very nice. All right. Let's continue with our chapter. Kringle still didn't understand. Well, Chris, the laws of the state and Maplewood's charter only allow us to keep old people as long as they are in good and mental health. What's the matter with me? Asked Chris. You've told me I'm in better shape than 90% of your patients. And mentally, well, I passed all of your tests with flying colors. Look, I still remember that last one. Chris proceeded to go through the routine of a simple mental test, adding and subtracting, giving synonyms for words, and so forth. There was no doubt about it. He knew all the answers. Mr. Kringle, in spite of his age, was keen, alert, and exceptionally skillful. I feel flattered for that. Thank you. I know, said the doctor quietly, but it's this Kris Kringle business. You know, we've discussed it before. You mean because I'm Santa Claus? The doctor nodded slowly. But there's nothing wrong with that, said Chris. It happens to be the truth. It's not quite that simple, Pierce replied. Unfortunately, the board does not believe in Santa Claus, Chris. So technically, you're, well, not acceptable. So I'm not sane because the board of directors doesn't believe in Santa Claus? That's one way of putting it, admitted Dr. Pierce. Chris paused and reflected for a moment. What happens next? He asked. Pierce explained that Maplewood had an arrangement with the Mount Hope Sanatorium. That nut house? Chris exploded. Never! But what's your alternative? Pierce asked him. Have you got any money? Chris examined a small checkbook which lay on his desk. He had $34.86. Chris, you're pretty old, said Dr. Pierce. It won't be easy to earn a living. And if you're unsuccessful, you'll become a ward of the state. And if you're picked up because you tell somebody you're Santa Claus, you'll be sent to Mount Hope anyway. So why not go there direct? But Chris was adamant. There was nothing wrong with him, and he'd be darned if he was going to an asylum. Dr. Pierce finally conceded that was really up to Chris. If he left Maplewood, nobody would bother him. That would end the case as far as they were concerned. But what could Chris do? How could he fend for himself? He didn't have much money. Where would he stay? The zookeeper in Central Park is a friend of mine. I'll stay with him, Chris answered. Dr. Pierce urged him to reconsider and accept the transfer philosophically. You'll have time to think it over. We'll talk about it again, he said, as he moved towards the door. Chris nodded silently, but there was a look of determination on the old man's face. The moment the doctor had gone, he hauled out a large suitcase from his closet and briskly began to pack. That's the end of our first chapter. Doesn't sound good for Santa Claus. Me. Doesn't sound good for me, does it? No, it doesn't. But it's okay. I've read this book before. It'll be all right. If you're worried about me, don't worry. It'll be fine. Santa Claus is always fine. So I will see you again tomorrow. We will read chapter 2. I hope you're all starting off on a great 25 days of Christmas. I hope you're having fun in school. I hope you are getting ready to decorate the house so I'll be able to, see where your house is. Although, if you don't decorate your house, I'll still know where your house is. So you be good boys and girls, and I will see you tomorrow with chapter 2 of A Miracle on 34th Street by Valentine Davis. Goodbye.